So welcome everybody to our final session of the course, week 6 of the Sikh meditation course. And Pyari Sad Sangat Ji, Maharaj Ji Kirpa Naal, Maharaj kende virle kei ke, that it's very few and far between that are able to truly walk this path of love towards Paramatma, towards Vaheguru, towards that union, that emergence with Vaheguru. So we're all very blessed that we can come together as Sad Sangat and walk on this path to learn that vidyai, that greatness, that praise of our true source, of the one that gives us this breath, the one that gives us our food, our family, everything. And as we walk on this path, Maharaj Ji has blessed us even more to not just learn and have that gyan, have that gurmat wisdom that Guru gives us, but to also learn how to become Prabh Jaise Abhinasi, to become just like our beloved Vaheguru through that practice of the Simran. So today we're going to go a little bit different. We're going to try and bring in some science as well. Sometimes the mind has to be convinced to continue to walk this path. You know, we've had a lot of Q&As, we've had a lot of messages privately as well, that yes, this journey is beautiful and it's amazing when you're able to get up and do that Simran and throughout the day, but sometimes things get in the way. And we've all experienced that. You are not alone if you find that some days you just not, you're those Panchjor within us just don't want you to do that Simran, and we fall. And then we get back up and we fall again. And that is just the kill of those Panchjor within us. But that Atma, that pure, that drop of Vaheguru, that is our true selves, which is our true source, is equally always calling us. Paramatma is always calling us. They know us by name. And for many yugs, for many lifetimes, they've been calling us home. And so today we're going to learn a little bit more about that game. We're going to use a bit of science to help us to understand. Many of us have been born or brought up or educated or worked in this country. And so sometimes that helps. But not just normal science. We want to go a little bit into kind of quantum reality as well, not too much, because ultimately what Guru tells us, what Guru Bani tells us, that is Turki Bani, that's come from Vaheguru themselves, and that is ultimate truth. But because our thinking can be small, sometimes we use these different methods to help us to understand on a deeper level. So, as we always do, just before we begin, we've been on this journey together these 6 weeks. So just take a moment in the chat. Don't think too much about it. You know, we're trying to kill our thoughts as much as possible. But just maybe in 1 or 2 words, in 1 sentence, how have you changed since starting this course or the Simran? And a second sentence is, who do you want to be? How do you want to show up in this world? And as you start thinking about that and as you start typing that into the chat for all of us to share, the reason why we're asking this is if we don't stop and acknowledge the kirpa, the grace that Maharaji's blessed us with, then it can be easy to fall off. And if we're not intentional about who we want to be, where we want to go, again, it's really easy to fall off the path and just become consumed with the 3D world, with Maya again. So that's why we're asking the question. So Benji, I'm going to ask you, Darshan Benji, Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Just in a nutshell, what would you say? What's the biggest thing? I know there's hundreds of things that have changed for you, but what has been one of the biggest things that's changed since you started either this course or Simran? And who do you want to be?
So for me, I I don't really know how to answer that because I feel like what hasn't changed. But in terms of where I'm at the moment, the biggest thing that is noticeably different for me at this point in my journey is the 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 way in which when challenges come up, or internal or external challenges. So if there's conflict, if there's a bit of, actually yesterday, me and my husband, were a bit kind of irritable with each other, a bit off with each other. I was a little bit um, kind of, you know, immersed in a Rajogun, and but before the Simran, before the consistency with the Simran, that would have overtaken the whole day. It would have lasted days. There would have been a lot of negativity, would have ended in a big argument, Um, and now, when these conflicts happen, whether they're external, whether I'm just feeling a little low, or, you know, boredom is something that comes up sometimes internally. And now it's like it lasts a very short amount of time. I know that as soon as I go home, as soon as I connect to Simran, as soon as I come back to that space, I'm going to be brand new again. So it's two things. It's, reactivity, it lasts much less time. Secondly, having trust and um, belief that when I go home, having that reassurance, in a way, that comfort, that as soon as I connect to Simran, as soon as I go into that state, everything's going to be fixed, the internal and the external. So it's just an incredibly powerful way to live life, because now there's no problem that's insurmountable, like Simran always, I know that, with not just a theoretical knowingness, but an internal one, that um, I'm going to be brand new once I'm going to feel that sense of being rejuvenated, and, I'm going to feel connected. I'm going to feel whole. And so then it doesn't matter, what's going on the outside. So yeah, I don't know how to express the gift, how big a gift that is to, for me. It's everything. Yeah.
Like Sahib Mera Neet Nafa is what came up for me, that Vaheguru's always new. The more we continue on this journey, we discover more and more ways that Maharaj is keeping us, is holding us, is supporting us. So that's amazing. So I'm just going to quickly read a few of the comments, because we've actually got quite a bit to get through today. So not reacting to things the way I used to, completely put different perspective on life. Amazing. Notice being more present, less reactive, and want to keep connecting with Vaheguru. Amazing. Before, wanting to change things so I can be happy. After, trying to experience surge in whatever the situation is. Beautiful. Leaning more on Vaheguru's grace through all that life presents, and using Simran to bring me back into a neutral space. Beautiful. Much calmer, less reactive. Consistency of doing Simran helps with being disciplined about my thoughts, actions, and knowing there is a higher power to guide me. Calmer and less reactive to situations. When turbulence arises within me, I'm able to connect to peace a lot quicker than before. Feeling an anchor and catching ourselves, being more and more present. So presence is coming up again and again, that difference between being very reactive. And the way that I think of it is, we can be a victim to life. We can be a victim to our own thought patterns, our habits, our belief systems. We can be a victim to our environment, to what other people are doing or what's happening outside of us. But in Gurbani, Maharaji never treats us like a victim. They always say, Appe beej, appe khao. They always say, Garmi apo apni. That we are, to some extent, we are creating our own reality, which we're going to talk more about. But actually, Maharaji is empowering us to take life into our own hands. Yes, there's their grace. Yes, there's things that are out of our control, but actually, the most powerful thing that we can do is be in control of our own mind. Man jeete jagjit. When we conquer that mind, when we win over our mind away from the Panchjot and bring it back into the Atma, back to the Jyot, then we have a lot more power, we have a lot more presence, we have a lot more control. This isn't the right word, but we have a better experience of life. So my whole life has changed in how I feel, what I want, what I need. Amazing. Anger that lived with and used to consume me only arises now when it's actually needed. Amazing. Which thankfully is not often. The thoughts that went round and round in my head tormented me on an ongoing basis and now come to visit and then float by like clouds. Wow. Even if I do wake up feeling funny, doing my Nitnem, Sukhmani Sahib fix me, and the reminder of the day goes amazingly. I'm in a deeper funk. My Shabbat fix me. Okay, amazing, Angie. So feel free to continue reading the comments. But just amazing, you know, and this is Maharaj the Vidya. This is what Maharaji wants for all of us, is to have this beautiful experience of life, you know. Gobind Pao Bhagat da Bukha. The only thing that Vaheguru Gobind wants for or from us is not to follow a strict regime of this, that, and the other. It's not about the do's and the don'ts. It's not even about the Ten Commandments, right? The only thing that Vaheguru wants from or for us is that pyar, is that love, that bow, because that is what we are. That is our true source. That's what we're meant to be experiencing. But at the same time, there's this kill of the Panchjot that is dragging us back into dukh again and again. And, you know, Maharaj kende, simara, simara, simara guru apna soya man jagai. That when we do this Simran, our mind is asleep in this other reality, thinking that it's going to come from the outside, from the 3D world, from Maya. But as we're doing this Simran as Sangat, as we're learning this Gyan and practicing it, what's happening is our mind is now awakening. And that's why now we can see who we've been. We can see what thoughts we've had. We can see how that's created certain emotions, certain reactions in the world. And as the mind awakens, it also starts to connect deeper to that source of peace, of love, a compassion, and joy within us. And so we want to continue on that journey, Angie. So I'm going to really briefly talk about some of these barriers and how to understand them in a different way. And then I'm going to invite Benji, and we'll do it together, to go more into kind of what is Vaheguru? How do we really understand this connection between us and Vaheguru? So we've talked a lot about the Dragon before. You know, we all wake up on a normal journey. We'll wake up with these hopes, wishes, and desires, and we learn, you know, when we're in the mother's womb, we're connected to Vaheguru, and Vaheguru's protecting us from the fire of that womb. And when we leave, in the same way, there's this fire of Maya, of our hopes, wishes, desires. There's the fire of the anger when we don't get what we want, the greed, the attachment, the expectation, the fears, the hatred, the duality. And that's what happens when we're walking on that path of thought, of materialism. But Maharaj is telling us within Gurbani, through the life and the experience of the gurus, of the bhagats, of the bhatts, within Gurbani, Maharaj is telling us that actually we were meant to come back. We were meant to remember. We were meant to walk on this path of loving connection to Vaheguruji. And that might start through that physical journey, Santaka Marag, Dharam Ki Pauri, that path of the saint, that staircase, where we start doing Satoguni things. But ultimately, we want to go even beyond that. We want to go into that fourth state of that Simran, where we become no one. Aap gavaiya, we lose our sense of our own thoughts, you know, that fake reality of our limited belief systems. And instead we're connecting to Vaheguruji's system, to their hukam, to what is their command, what is their instruction for us in our daily life, which is always for our pala, which is always for our good. But what happens is when we're just stuck within this cycle, we do the good things, unexpected things happen, we fall. We want to be a good person, something happens and we fall. And as we start to do that, Simran, go beyond our identity, beyond our body, we start to experience Vaiguruji. We start to go home, as Benji was saying, and we start to connect more and more to our true selves. Then, when we come back into this world, we still have that one foot in Nirgun, in the energy of Vaiguruji, in our true selves, and then we can still show up within life. We can still do our seva for our family. We can still do our job. We can still go on holidays. We can do everything that normal people do, but we will enjoy it so much more because now we're seeing it without the mel, without the dirt of expectation, of fear, of hatred. We're seeing it from a place of peace, and everything is just a bonus on top of that. But what gets in the way? Why do we keep falling? And one Pankti within Japji Sahib that speaks to me again and again and again, when Maharaj is explaining this Kale, is Body 20 of Japji Sahib. And I'm just going to quickly do chords of it, but we're going to go backwards. So I'll read it, Billa. Pariye mat papa ke sang oh to pੈ nave ke rang punni papi आखन नाहे कर कर करना लिख ले जाहो आपे बीज आपे ही खाहो Nanak hukami av ho jao. So Maharaj is telling us about this hukam. There's lots of interpretations of what is hukam. One for me is law, you know, that every action has a reaction, if you like. So what we think, what we feel, what we say, what we do, that's going to have a reaction. So Maharaj is saying, wanting to be a good person, for example, that's punni, that's a good deed to do. But just by saying it, that's not enough. It's actually what we're thinking, what we're feeling, what we're saying, what we're doing again and again and again. That becomes the seed that we plant. And then there's going to be a consequence of that. And a lot of the time, this is happening unconsciously or subconsciously, where we don't even realize how much fear is within us, how much judgment is within us. And we're creating that again and again. And then that's the experience that we're having. So some people might be familiar with this diagram through things like CBT. So a thought within our mind, even if something happened 20 years ago, and we think about that person did that to me, that person said that to me, even if we think about that now, it's going to create an emotional reaction. It's going to release chemicals of cortisol, adrenaline, those kind of hormones within our body. And then we're going to react. That's what people are talking about on the chat. Actually, I'm not following that cycle anymore. I'm questioning this thought. I'm realizing this thought has come from the past. It's come from the Banjjur. It's come from Gal. And so I'm no longer reacting. I'm now responding to what's in front of me. And that's the difference. And so Joe Dispenza tells us, who kind of looks at more of the scientific side of these things, is that, that's how our personality is created then. We have an experience and we keep thinking about the past or the future or judging the present, and that becomes our mood, becomes our temperament, it becomes our personality, and then that becomes our external reality, our personal reality. So we're trying to break this cycle of thinking the same thing every day and then having that same emotional reaction and that same physical reaction. And why is it so difficult to break that? Because all of this is happening in our subconscious mind, if we want to look at it from a kind of worldly scientific perspective. From the Gurbani perspective, I would say this is where the Panchur are doing their work. They get us stuck in this habit. They're bringing us back. Oh, someone did not meet my expectation today. And they'll bring us back into Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moh, Ahankar. They'll bring us back into slander, into hatred, to judgment, into our egoic beliefs. And so we're constantly operating on this subconscious mind. It's like this is an iceberg, and all of this stuff is happening below our awareness. And so sometimes that's good. A lot of the time it's good. We don't have to think about how to brush our teeth, how to tie our shoelaces, because that's happening in the subconscious mind. If back in the day, if there was a certain type of food that gave us a tummy ache, we need to store that in our subconscious mind so we don't eat that food again. But what happens is We get that text message. One person says or does something that makes us feel bad. And now we've stored that in our subconscious mind and we start to believe that that person's a bad person. Or everybody who's Amritari is a bad person, or every Musliman's a bad person, or every XYZ person is a bad person. And it's simply not true. It's just something that's been stored in the subconscious mind. It's something that the Panchod play on. And we have more than 60,000 thoughts daily. So we're talking about vichar mare, kill those thoughts. But we're not even aware of how many thoughts we're having day in, day out. And our memories change over time. How many times have you sat with your cousins from childhood and you're remembering an event and one person saying, no, this is what happened, and you're saying, no, this is what happened? Or, with your husband or your wife or your children, and you even might even start to have an argument about you did this and the other person just doesn't remember it the same way because the brain will change it. It's based on emotion. And so we've talked about willpower. Only 5% of the time are we in our conscious mind where we can use that willpower. How many times have we decided to go on a diet, right? Or not be angry anymore, or be more dharmi, do more part and things like that. We're only there 5% of the time. Now, what can we do about this? One thing is things like therapy, mindfulness, journaling, contemplation, prayers. And that's making us more aware. Learning about Gurbani, doing Khoj of Gurbani is making us more aware of ourselves. So we're increasing the amount of time we're in that conscious mind, right? And so what we need there is repetition. And we need that willpower to keep doing it, to keep doing it. And that's one way of doing it. But what happens on the day that we're tired, right? What happens on the day when things aren't going our way? We don't have that willpower anymore. We lose our awareness to the Panchjot. But what Maharaj is giving us is even beyond that. They're, what they're giving us is a direct connection to our super consciousness. So for us to connect to our Atma, which is part of Paramatma, that Vaheguru that's everywhere, that's everything, the intelligence of everything. That very intelligence that created a baby in the womb perfectly and then created milk within the mother to feed. That intelligence that created the sun, the exact distance, so we're not burning and we're not freezing to death. That gravity that allows us to walk so we're not stuck to the earth, but we're not bouncing off. That same intelligence is accessible to us. And so as we start to do this Simran, we go beyond that subconscious mind. We even go beyond our conscious mind and we start to connect to the superconscious. So when we're going into sun, when we're killing our vichar, we go into sun, into that void, where Maharaji was saying in that Shabad, Pariye mat papa ke sang. So we spoke about it's not enough to just want to do it. It's the things that we're actually thinking, feeling, and doing every day that's creating our reality. But Maharaji's given us the solution in the first two lines. When our mind is full of these bab, which is just that separation, all bab is you've forgotten Vaheguru. When you remember, when you're connected to Vaheguru, that's the only pun. Kal mein eho pun gun govind gahe. When we're in that state of praise of Vaheguru, of connection to Vaheguru, that is the only pun. And how do we get to that state? Oho tope na vekirang. When our mind is in that state of the external, of separation, we wash the mind with that naam. And as we go into that state of sun, that mind is washed. Then this subconscious mind, those habits, those belief systems, those triggers, they start to get washed away automatically as we start to do that Simran. We go into the state of sun, as we've mentioned many times. You'll realize you'll come out of that state of whether it's Simran, whether it's sun, and you'll just feel calmer. You'll just feel less reactive without even thinking about it. You will be more loving. You will be more compassionate. And where the willpower does come in, and as Benji always says, it's not willpower necessarily. There's at some point you need it, but it becomes who you are. It becomes a journey of love. It becomes even something as simple as, I love who I am when I do this practice. And I'm so triggered when I don't, right? there's so much conflict in my household when I fall asleep and I get engrossed in expectations and fears. But actually, when I feel really connected, my household is like heaven. It's like Swarga. I love all my family members to bits. And so you start to fall in love with who you are when you connect with that. You start to fall in love with Vaiguru and their hukam, as in their instruction to do this Simran, to connect to yourself. And you want to do it more and more. And the more you do it, instead of having a vicious cycle, it becomes a virtuous cycle. Because the more Simran you do, the more you go into Sun, the more that dirt gets washed away, the more you're tapping into love, into compassion, into self awareness. And the closer you're feeling viscerally beyond the senses to Vaheguruji's presence. So I'm using Joe Dispenza not because Joe Dispenza is my guru, but just because being brought up in this country, I have a bit of that Western mindset still, so it's nice to know scientifically as well how Maharaj knew this hundreds of years ago and how even the Vedas knew this thousands of years ago, right? So Joe Dispenza tells us, I can't actually see it. Benji, do you want to read that? Because I've got something in the way. I can't actually see what the quote is. The first line is saying.
Hanji, as we slow our brain waves down during meditation, we are crossing the threshold into the realm of our subconscious, where we encounter hidden aspects of ourselves. We're opening Pandora's box.
Hanji, do you want to continue and explain?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, this actually, Benji, as you were talking, I was really hoping that you were going to put this slide on as the next
Vaheguru.
slide. So I love this slide. And, when these kind of newer age scientists have looked at our brain activity and our brain waves during meditation and different states of consciousness, like being awake and being asleep. Um, and when they've looked at brain activity specifically during meditation, what they found is that generally, kind of prior to meditation, when we're doing our day-to-day activities, interacting with others, just normal day-to-day, we're in a beta wave brainwave pattern, which is the second one down. So kind of that's where most of us are, kind of generally day to day. And if we're the more kind of under stress or more active we are mentally, the higher up. So then gamma waves, saying hyper brain activity, which is great for learning. But even in states of stress, we have kind of those kinds of that kind of brain activity. And then when we are feeling more relaxed, perhaps when we're doing some meditation, our brain waves start to slow down and we go into alpha waves. And then we go even more deeper into our meditation, going into that state of sun, sehaj, kind of drifting into a kind of sleep. We're even going into those theta waves. And then delta waves is the brain activity when we're sleeping, but not dreaming. So I think this would correlate to sun, the state of sun. And Benji, there's also another level of brain activity, isn't there? Or is that gamma?
It's gamma.
Gamma. So when we are, I'm not 100% sure about this, but is gamma when we're in very deep states of meditation but fully awake?
Hanji, Hanji. So that's, if you want to say, that's that super conscious when
Super
you
conscious.
people talk about they'll have their download, they're having a mystical experience. That's where it then goes into gamma.
Okay, sorry. So I got it a bit wrong at the beginning. Um, yeah, and it's incredible because then what we know is that, babies in the first 7 years of their life are kind of more in alpha kind of brain waves. And in that kind of state, um, we're very, we're like sponges. So if you see a child playing with a toy or just even sitting on their own, they're very joyful, very engaged in what they're doing. They're absorbing everything. They're picking up language. They're playing with a toy again and again. So they're in that state of absorption, and that's where those subconscious patterns are laid down. And what's amazing is that when we do the Simran and we slow the brain waves down, we also enter into that state where we are very kind of open to programming. And so when we're doing the Simran specifically, we are able to start to reprogram, because we're taking ourselves into that same state that the child is in when they're developing all of that new learning, laying down all those subconscious patterns. So if you think about the whole package of Sikhi, reading the Gurbani, doing the Simran, and we've said during the course as well that when you read Gurbani after doing the Simran, then you're connecting at a much deeper level. And what we found is that that Gurbani that we're reading, and even going into that presence where we're connecting to Turki Bani, listening to Shabad, connecting to Bani straight from Paramatma's Mukh, all of that is being laid down within us. And that is how those subconscious patterns start to shift things about us that we never believed could change. For example, for me it was anger. I thought, I'm on this path, it's great, but anger is something that's just never going to shift. It's something that's been with me for God knows how many lifetimes, and it's just part of my personality. And then doing the Simran, and not consciously focusing on anger, but finding just less reactivity, finding that anger is not coming up as much, and if it is, to a lesser intensity. And then learning about all of this stuff around our brain waves and how those subconscious patterns are laid down and how they can be reprogrammed. So, this stuff is just incredibly powerful, but beyond maybe what we can access just now. Anji. There are some actually some comments as well. So, Angie, we can talk about Joe Dispenza so, at some point. So let's go through the slides, and then we'll come back to. I'll get Amandeep Benji to answer that question. So, how within Gurbani, and we've been sharing on this course, that we are not this physical body, that this desh, meaning the physical body and beyond, is not our true home, is not our true existence, that this body is just a kapara, that is transitory, that Gurbani tells us that this material realm is an illusion, And what does that actually mean? So when we look into quantum physics, in more recent years, what's been discovered is that even everything that is material in this world that we can clearly see, touch, taste, smell, people will say, well, how is it an illusion? It's clearly in front of me. I can touch it. I can experience it with my senses. How does that make sense? What is Gurbani saying? And when we look into kind of quantum physics to give us a bit of a framework as well, what we've discovered is that these atoms that make up this material realm, in every single one of these atoms, 99.99999% of every single atom is space, is non-material, when scientists have looked deeply into it. And prior, people would say, okay, well, this 99.999% is just a nothingness, it's just a space. And now what people are discovering, experiencing, theorizing is that, and the 99.999% space is actually energy, is creative potential. It's the energy that came first, and then the matter is created from the energy. So that energy is not just a nothingness, it's that incredible creative potential, divine Paramatma, you could say, from where creation is coming. And we explored this at the beginning of the course, where we saw that prior to matter, all there was energy. And it was from that energy, it was from that super kind of divine potential that matter came into being. So even though everything that we experience here in this material realm seems like it's physical, actually it's not. 99.999% of it is energy. And then we start to understand sab gobind hai, sab gobind hai, gobind bin nahi koi. And then the more that we connect to that energy, we could call it energy, but it's Paramatma. So it's not, energy is a lower term for, we're not, that's not accurately depicting what we're talking about. But when we start to connect to that Paramatma inside of us, when we go beyond material, the more we become energy and less matter, the more we go beyond our thoughts and become sukham, we start to experience this world as more energy and less matter. We start to see it for what it truly is. And here, Emily Benji's brought up this slide that, prior to anything coming into creation, Arbada Narbata Tundukara, Taran na Gagan Hukam Apara, Na Din Ran, Na Chanda Na Suraj, Sun Samad Langaina. There was that infinite space, that void, source, pure love, pure energy from where creation came into being. And this is what we're connecting to within the Simran, Vaheguru in their Nirgun Sarup. So as we go beyond material realm, as we go beyond our senses, as we go beyond our thoughts, we start to access that infinite void, that field of pure energy. And what happens is that, coming back to what Benji was saying earlier, is that when we connect to that field of pure energy, we're connecting to that divine intelligence from where creation came from. What is not possible within this realm? When we are accessing, tapping into, becoming one with the source of creation, what are mere problems that we encounter in this material realm in the face of that power and divine intelligence? So this is where this becomes practical for us in our day-to-day. As we build that Ana Jana to that home, to that space, to that void, Gurmukha Ave Jai Nisan, then we start to be able to live life from a place of being carefree, from a place of knowingness that Thir kar baiso, har jan pyare, Satguru tumre kaj savare. That we start to see that when we tap into that energy, space, potential, then all of our garbage get resolved. Then there's no need to think excessively, to plan excessively, to worry, to try and control, because we know that we have a solution that exists beyond the mind, that this analytical mind is limited and it will only give us limited outcome. So we put that all to one side. We only do that from a place of trust. We know, we start to develop this knowingness that when I go to that space, that I'm accessing the highest solution for this problem. And then over and over again, we start to have experiences where we put those thoughts to one side. We do the most difficult task, which is breaking that friendship to those sponge, to that analytical mind, and trusting in the friendship with Paramatma. And we do that time and time again, and we see the fruits. And then every breath becomes an opportunity to do that. Every single vichar that we take, we can evaluate. Do I need to do this? Let me trust in Paramatma. Let me go back to that infinite, divine, loving intelligence and live life from that uchi avastha, from that high vibration state. And this is where, we talk about manifestation and things like that. And this is where, when the Gurmukh mind is connected to that high vibration, whatever the Gurmukh needs is provided for. Jo mange Thakur apne te soi deva. And if all that we're asking for is connection with the divine, if all that we're asking for is to be in that high vibration state, to be in that state of Nam, then in that state, those Panj, that Maya, that Gal become our Dasi. They run after us, you know? What can we do to serve you? So it's not that our needs don't get met, Sangatji. Our needs get met beyond what we ever thought was possible, without us even having to try. So Sangatji, Hanji.
Yeah. I think it would be really cool if you told one of your stories. So we both and throughout the Sangat we've had these experiences where on a physical level we've needed something and we've had no clue how it's going to happen. And we've just done our Simran, trusted Paramatma, and something's shown up. Would you mind telling one of your stories about
Yeah,
that?
yeah. This is really good for me as well, Sangatji, because in recent weeks I've fallen a little bit into Rajogun. We've been trying to do the house up. We've got some guests coming. And, the mind forgets. I've been on this path doing Simran for so many years, and even going into these deeper states. But the game is still ongoing, right? As soon as the mind becomes complacent, those sponge will jump up and do their job. So this is great for me as well, Sangat, because it's reminding me, and this is the purpose of Sangat, that you know going to that space is everything. And so, really amazing example that I think it was 2 years ago or something, that we were all planning to go away to India for a Simran camp, had the great yearning to go, um, having been before, knowing that I'm going to be surrounded by elevated souls, high vibration, going to experience a shift in my personality. It's impossible to leave a place of high vibration and not be changed. So I had this deep yearning for me and my family to go to India. And for those of you who know me personally, I have 4 children at that time. I had the 2 younger ones were very little, perhaps 2 and a few months old. So I had 2 little ones and 2 older ones. And everything about it just seemed like it was impossible. My husband had the year before um, said with certainty that he wasn't going to go back to India with small children. It was going to be too difficult. There was no room to maneuver on that whatsoever. And he's a very strong minded individual. So, once he decides something, there's no going back on it. And literally for the whole year, he'd been reminding me literally every month that, don't get any ideas. We're not going to be able to go financially. We're not in a good position to go. And he was right, finances were low. It was it was an impossibility on all ends. But as time approached, you know, we all just, the Sangat, we were all, Amanik Benji, Guneet Benji, they were all going to be going. And I had this strong yearning. And I knew deep, deep in my heart that I wanted to have that experience, you know. And I started pushing my husband, bothering him, subtly hinting to him, and then having full-blown arguments with him. How can you not see? And bearing in mind, me and my husband are both on this spiritual path, and both connecting to Simran, but having full-blown arguments over this, like, me trying to, this is an old personality trait of mine, which is to push to get things that I want within this realm. And so pushing and pushing, and he was not budging. And then, with the Guru Sahib's Kirpa and the Kirpa of the Sangat, I was coming into Sangat and I was hearing that we don't need to push. We don't need to work through those old channels. We can go beyond time. We can go beyond space. We can go beyond the laws of this material realm. We just need to tap into that space. And, what I realized was that at that point, that I needed to go home. That was the only thing that I needed to do. And that was the only thing I needed to ask for. So I even put the desire to go away to one side, because from the Sangat, from the Gurbani, from the Simran, had the trust that going into that space, whatever was right for me was going to happen. Whatever was going to keep me at that same vibration was going to happen, was going to occur. And so I really had to put everything aside, old personality, take my hand out, out of that jar where I've got the, I don't know if we've used this analogy, but in Gurbani it says, Markat masti anaj ki man baurare. That monkey, when it's being captured for the circus, the hunter places corn at the bottom of this bottleneck jar. And that the opening of that jar is just wide enough for the monkey to get its hand through. But once the hand is filled with corn, once that monkey is holding on to that food, that anaj at the bottom, there's no way with the hand in a fist shape that it's going to be able to get out. And so then the monkey is trapped, right? Because the monkey's not going to let go of that corn, is not going to let go of that anaj. And how dear is that to the monkey? And in the same way, the Maya, the thoughts have become so dear to our minds. So, for me, I had to just let go of all of that desire, all of the vichar, that relationship with the Panj. And then miraculous things started to happen. A few days later, I casually mentioned, that something around India, not that I wanted to go. And my husband looked me in the eye and he said, okay, let's just go. And I knew at that moment that that was not my husband. And then, the financial side of things, right? So we went. Um, so we went, miraculous. The whole family went. And we came
So
back.
Benji,
And
didn't you randomly get a letter?
so this happened after
Did
Benji.
it happen after? I thought it happened
Yeah,
before.
no, it
Okay.
happened. It happened. I needed to trust fully, right, for it to happen. Afterwards, we got a letter in the post, right? We came back, obviously, probably in debt at that point. And because we've got a lot of children, so it's quite expensive to go to India now to fly. And we got back and got this letter in the post. And, somehow, somewhere, we were entitled to a redemption refund of something like £8,000 out of nowhere, which would have more than covered our trip. And my husband actually was the one who read the letter. And, we looked at each other and there was just a knowingness, we knew that this, we were being provided for, that we didn't need to worry about anything. So these miracles have happened in many ways for many of us in the Sangat. And the more that we trust and surrender, Sangatji, these miracles are possible for us.
Hanji. So this is an opportunity for us all to reflect. If we're energy, we're vibrating at a certain level, and this chart is showing us, based on our day-to-day emotions, our thought patterns, where we're vibrating. So just taking a moment to think about where are you during the day, and what is that bringing into your life? So for Benji, there was that desire to go, then there was the letting go, but that letting go, Benji mentioned the word trust, but trust comes from experience, right? Trust comes from love, trust comes from all of that. But if we're constantly thinking about the past, for example, we're feeling guilty, we're feeling shameful, we're blaming other people, we're in a state of lust, we're going to vibrate quite low, and we're going to, just like a magnet, we're going to attract that into our lives as well, through our thoughts, through our words, through our actions. But if we're vibrating on a higher level, Maharaj talks about Anand, Anand Sabko ke hai, Anand Guru te jane. That state of bliss is right up there. That state of love, of joy is right up there. And this, don't take this as Gurbani. This is just an illustration to say what we're talking about. But having a think about, where am I day to day? If I'm walking on this path, if I want peace, are my thoughts, are my words, are my feelings, are my actions reflecting that peace, reflecting that joy? Or are we falling back down again and again? And it's good to just be aware of that. We're not being aware of it so we can fall into guilt. We're just being aware of who we don't want to be so we know who we do want to be. So just taking a moment with that.
And for those of us who are particularly observant, you might notice how the Tregun map onto this.
Right.
So the lower vibration relates to tamogun. As we go up, goes to rajogun. As we go even further up, goes to satogun. And there's actually an image like this, which is a bit different, isn't it, Benji? That there's a above bliss. Um, I think Joe Dispenza created that image, but above bliss is
I thought I had it.
yeah, I don't know, I think you have yeah, above the bliss is pure energy. There's actually a different version of this where even beyond Satogun, when you go into what Joe Dispenza calls nowhere, no space, no time, no one, which is that nothingness, that void, that sun, you're accessing the supreme consciousness, the pure energy, which goes even beyond those Satoguni qualities. Hanji. So, in the same way, Benji was saying, where do we vibrate? And how we've been talking about it from a Gurbani perspective is where do we spend our swas? You know, Hanji.
Yeah. So again, this is just an illustration of where we are when we're feeling that love. And if you like, this illustration is how in touch we are, how connected we are to Paramatma, to that what some people will call the field of energy. That's how connected we are. And when we're in that state of fear, we're more in a state of matter. We're not connecting to that infinite possibility, that infinite potential. Even on a nervous system level, when we go into fight flight, when we're in a state of stress, our focus will be really narrow because if we're in that state, we're just trying to solve a problem. And I think it was an Einstein quote or a misquote even that um, you can't find a solution to your problem with the same level of thinking that created the problem in the first place. So when we're just stuck in this place and we want other people to change, or we're just fighting and in that state of fear, you can't connect to anything outside of yourself, and it's really difficult to change. But when you start to expand into that state of love, we walk on that path of loving connection to Paramatma. We start to trust them. We start to trust that there's something more than just our thinking and ourselves. We start to find solutions beyond wanting other people to change or our situation to change. Then we open ourselves up wide. And when you go from that state of stress to fight, flight, to rest and digest, then we have a much wider vision. And those things that were there all along. One thing that I was reflecting on is thinking about relationships, ironically, that Benji was mentioning. I was just speaking to someone, um, and it's, you can be really think of all the flaws of someone when you're having a galish, when you're having a conflict with them. But actually, if you just stop and you think about all their gun, all their virtues, that's going to bring you back out into this wider space. And we're just talking about Sattva here. You just come into that space of Sattva where you start to think more loving thoughts towards people. That's going to really help. Um, and as we're doing that Simran and we start to go into those higher states, Maharaj di Kirpana, with that Uddham as well, with that effort as well, that just becomes a natural part of you. And so I've had it, we're all constantly having challenges. It's not that the challenges stop, but you don't see them as problems anymore. You just see them actually, you see them in an exciting way that they're just going to deepen your connection. So I've had some challenges recently, but it was just that knowing coming back to actually, this isn't my problem. My job is to do that Simran, is to trust Paramatma and trust that whatever's happening is happening for my pala and let go of those thoughts. They'll come like waves. And sometimes we get engrossed in them and then we come back to the Simran and we let them go. And then miracles start to happen. Amazing things start to happen. Vaheguru. So there's this concept of where your attention goes, your energy flows, and you get more of what you focus on. So again, if you're focusing on the problems, on other people's flaws, on your flaws, on Maya, you'll get more of that. But when you start to focus on Paramatma, on Vaheguru, on love, on compassion, on patience, on forgiveness, on being in the present moment, in that presence, then that's what you'll get more of. Maharaj Kende, पैर रच रहे सो निर्भय होए जैसा सेवे taisa hoye. Whatever you serve with this mind, that's what you become like. So when you serve Vaheguru, when you're chanting in praise, in love, Vaheguru, Vaheguru, and you're letting go of all those other thoughts of disconnection, you will start to become more and more like Vaheguru. You'll become more fearless. You'll become more loving. You'll become more compassionate. And so again, asking that question again, let's be intentional with this. Who do you want to be? How do you want to show up? Because it's possible. It's entirely possible once we think about our lives, not just in this physical realm, but in this spiritual realm. Why do we have all these sakya? Why do we have all these stories of Ganika, the prostitute, Sajjan Tug, serial killers, cannibals, the worst of the worst, transforming when they met their guru? We have those stories to tell us that it's entirely possible for us as well. It does not matter who you've been, what trauma you've had, what's happened in the past, or even what you're struggling with now is irrelevant. What matters is, what are you going to do with this breath now? Are you going to use this breath to connect to Vaheguru, to connect to Simran, to connect to that love? Or are you going to still be stuck in the past? Are you going to choose what the Panchod are feeding you? And that's where that transformation happens, right? So when we Maharaj kende manas to devte kiye, karat na lagi var, that Maharaj changes us, transforms us from normal human beings into demigods. And again, you can only take our word on it and your own experience of it. But we've seen, and Benji loves to tell my stories because it is that story of transformation from someone who's very analytical, very stuck in my trauma, stuck in my limited belief systems, stuck in my physical, emotional pain, mental pain, a victim of life, and somebody felt like they were so unworthy, didn't even have a right to be in this world, to be breathing. And, it's Maharaj the Vidya that I'm not perfect by any means. I still have a long way to go. But Maharaji has brought us to this place where we're sitting here and we're talking to Sangat from, being painfully shy, from feeling like I had no right to do anything, and having a healed body, having a healed mind, having healed emotions. That's that's what Guru does. That's what the Simran does. Um, and if it's possible for me, it's possible for everyone. Anji, Benji.
Hanji.
So,
So this is where, you know, we start to explore, what does it mean to merge? What does it mean to become one? And Gurbani says that the mind in its purest form, outside of vichar, is just like Paramatma. Nanak Gurmukh aap pashana prabh jaise abinasi. That as the mind, as the vichar clear, as those thoughts settle, and the mind goes into that state of sun and goes deeper into those states of sun, the mind, that is how the mind merges into Paramatma, into that divine light sound. And if the mind is able to learn how to do that whilst we're living, then we are fulfilling the purpose of our life. Pei Parapat Manuk de Huriya Gobind Milan ki eh teri pariya. That is how we practically, then when the end of this life comes and we have to leave our sarir, in that moment, the mind will know how to merge back. And that will be the end of that kill of the game, because the mind will merge back. So, Sangati, Paramatma, our true state, our true state is Paramatma. Man tu jot sarup hai, apna mool pashan. That as we do this Simran, as we come into Sangat, as we start to experience ourselves as Jyoth, as light, we start to live life like we are spiritual beings having a human experience, as opposed to the other way around. As if human beings having a spiritual experience. It's not that. We are spirit, we are divine, we are Jyoth. Anything that is physical here is just part of this game. The body is the costume. This world from Akash to Tati is the stage, and the truth is always that we are Jyoth. And if we want to live a life of Sukh, the deeper we go with that knowingness, the more Sukh that we're going to experience. If I was to say to you now that imagine now, I know this sounds a bit morbid, but it's an analogy that's come up for me that's helped, which is, let's say from now, we're dead. We're dead to the desires of this world. We're dead to the expectations, the goals, the ambitions. Gurbani tells us that when we learn to die, we learn to live forever. And what Gurbani is talking about is when we learn to die to this maya, to this sarir, when we learn to live as Jyoth in connection, in that state of no desire, in that state of knowingness that this is just a play, how much sukh is there? No more chinta fikr about the mortgage and about our savings or our retirement. No more worries about our careers or our children, In that few moments, before, let's say somebody was on their deathbed and, they have nothing left. They have nothing to worry about. There's nothing in their control. And if we can enter into that state now whilst we are living, then we can experience so much sukh, so much sahaj, so much peace of mind. And every single time we go into that state, we can access that sahaj, we can access that state of being Jivan Mukt. So, Sangatji, at this point, unless Amandeep Benji wants us to share any more, let's go into that state. Let's use this opportunity that we have now. And we're going to get ourselves into comfortable position, Sangatji. We have some time to go into that state that we've been talking about. So what we've been doing, Amrita Vela Sachanao Vadiyai Vichar. We've been doing Vichar. We've been understanding the gun of Paramatma. We've been learning and sharing our stories of our success stories, our stories of our experiences with Paramatma, with that energy, with divine intelligence. And now we feel inspired. Surna Sakhi Manajap Pyar. That we've heard the Sakya, now we've shared our experiences, we've heard the stories of the Bhagats, we've read all of that in the Gurbani. And now, Surna Sakhi Manajap Pyar. That the mind in that state of yearning to experience Paramatma now does the Simran, now does the Jap. Because it's that Jap, it's that practical, the meditation, the chanting, that's going to take us to that space of being able to experience those things for ourselves. So Sangatji, we know now how to practice the Simran in a way that's pleasing to Paramatma. Jo saas giras te aaye mera har har, so gur sikh guru man pave. So we're going to chant saas giras Simran, place all of our attention in that sound vibration. And we know now why we do this, because we want to take ourselves into vibration, into a state of energy as opposed to matter. And we want to chant and immerse ourselves so much in that sound that we lose awareness of everything that is not truly us. We lose awareness of this costume, this body, our environment, where we are, who we are, what time it is, who's around. and we just immerse ourselves in that field of divine light, of energy, supreme energy. So, karo shuru. Vai Guru, 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 Guru, Vai 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 Guru. Vai Guru, 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 Waheguru, 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 Waheguru. Guru, Var, 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 Guru, Guru, Var, 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 Guru. Guru, Var, 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 Guru. And we're going to chant internally. And now we're going to connect to that field of energy. We've cleared the thoughts. We've brought that fragmented attention into that single-minded focus. And now we're going to do Korj. We're going to access that field of energy, that Paramatma, that Sun, that Sehaj. And we're going to stabilize our attention, dikka our dhyan, either at the nabbi, the belly button, or just in front of us, in front of the eyes, into that space, that void. And we're just gonna see if we can keep our attention stable there without chanting. Sun Samad Gufate Asan Keval Brahm Purante Basan Bhagat Prap Sag Gosht Kal. In that state of Sun Samad, that is where we find Paramatma. And that is where the Bhagats do Goshti with Prabhu, with Paramatma. Discourse. Sangati, if we want to find our true mother and father, Gurbani tells us that we will find them here as we sit in Dhyan, in that body cave, in that gufa, in that state of Sun Samad. So Sangati, we're going to very, very slowly, as we come to the end of the Simran, open the eyes very slowly whilst keeping our attention inside. And even when we open the eyes, we're going to focus our attention just very near. Keep our attention very near to us. We don't want to start focusing on the things in our material realm, even our computer screen or phone. We want to keep our attention very close to the eyes and sit for a few moments with our attention in that space, that Kali Kala just in front of the eyes. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. So, Sangat Ji, this is our true nature. Those Gurna of Paramatma are manifest within us in that state that we can achieve through the Simran. And at this point, Sangat Ji, we've got some questions on the chat. Andy. So, Amandeep Benji, do you want to answer these questions? Waheguru, you're muted.
I'm just finding the question.
Okay, I can read them. After finishing Simran, how do you advise coming out of it? I ask because when you are in a higher state, it can feel painful in the head if you just stop the Simran. Is it best to come out slowly to prevent the discomfort?
Angie. Angie, so just like we did now, um,
Oh,
it's
sorry.
almost,
Benji
yeah,
said we answered her question.
Angie, yeah. So obviously, stop the chanting, go antargat, just sit for a while, and then very slowly opening the eyes, maintaining the focus. Ji.
And why are my eyes streaming with tears after sitting in dhyan?
So there could be two reasons. Um, one is a practical reason. We're just not used to sitting like that. And so the tears will stream. But the spiritual reason is, that Ishnan of the man is happening, that there's organ are being washed away, the flaws are being washed away, the mind is being cleansed. And sometimes that's a physical representation of a spiritual process. And something that we talked about, I think it might have been in the Q&A or the last session, was that sense of berag, that sense that we've been separated for so long. And when we start to tap into that connection again, we feel, we feel that love, but we also feel that time that has been lost where we haven't connected to that. So it could be any of those. Angie.
Benji's asked, is it necessary to focus on the nabi or in between the eyes?
Angie. So you can focus on either. If you are hearing, so it varies for people, but I can tell you my process was it's good to focus on the nabi if you're not yet hearing Shabad, or Shabad is very quiet. Because when we focus on the nabi, so we have these 2 points, the nabi and between the eyes, in front of the eyes, where we can activate that Shabad, where we can access Vaheguru. So the Guru Mukhs have always told us that when you sit in dhyan, if you focus on the nabi, and our experience has also been that Shabad starts to get louder. And then as when you are able to hear that Shabad, then I personally find it's better to focus between the eyes. We don't want to focus higher up in the forehead at this point. A lot of people make that mistake. They start trying to focus up here in the middle of the forehead, and then they start to see colors and illusions and have these strange mystical experiences which are still within Maya. So it's just between the eyes, maybe where you'd put your glasses, or even just in front of that, so not even on the body. But you can try either and see which one helps you. I know some people find it difficult to come down to that place, but ultimately we want to come up. But it's good if to hear the Shabad. Do you want to add, Benji?
Yeah, I think, we don't really, it's really important to do the Simran for a long time
Benji.
before we start sitting in dhyan.
Yeah.
Because if we have vichar and things like that, then we're not going to get the benefit of the Simran meditation. But ultimately, we're going to go from chanting to listening to seeing. So, the bhakti does change as we go along this path, a lot actually. Nadri Satgur Sevye, Nadri Seva Hoy, Nadri Eo Manavas Ai, Nadri Man Nirmal Hoy. That we do seva with our nadar, with our glance, with our eyes, at some point. So bhakti changes a lot. It deepens, and that's why, nicely following on to the next point, we've got to keep on coming back to the Sangat, to keep the progress going, to maintain that feeling of yearning, desire to walk on this path, because very quickly, easily, those entities will come up, take our attention away very easily in an instant, you know, um, take our dhyan away back into material realm. So if we keep coming back into the Simran, to the Sangat, sorry, then we will keep on reminding ourselves, why is it that we're doing this? What is our true spiritual purpose? How do we progress on this spiritual path? And for those of us who would be interested, we would love to have an in-person meeting with any of you that are kind of local to some main areas, to do some Simran together, Gurbani Vichar. And over the next couple of months, in the month of July, in fact, we're going to be having some gatherings across the country. So we're going to have a gathering in Slough, we're going to have a gathering in Bradford and in Walsall. Those are the three main areas. So if you're local to any of those, it would be lovely to, if you let us know as well on the group or personally, and we're gonna arrange during. We're gonna have camps already ongoing, Simran meditation camps. If you can come along to those, that would be brilliant. 3 day camps, 2 to 3 day camps. Um, but we will also have a special kind of reunion, I guess, for those who have attended this course within that as well. So it would be amazing to have your darshan, all of you, and continue to build the connection with yourselves. There are lots of questions coming up, which is brilliant. And we're gonna Benji, I'm gonna ask you to share because I think you're going to be offering a session weekly to follow on from this course.
Are you not joining, Benji?
No, I would love to, but I think yeah, we'll discuss that.
Hanji. So, what we'd like to do is to continue to offer this space on Sunday mornings. Um, so we will put the details on the WhatsApp group, whether it's 8 till 9 maybe. And I'm a bit conflicted in the sense that, Harbi Singh has a male group, a men's group on a Saturday. So whether we make this a female group, I don't know. I feel like we can all benefit. So, but yeah, just give us your feedback. But the idea is we continue this Gurmat Vichar and the opportunity to do Simran in Sangat on Sunday mornings. We also have some other things happening. So yeah, so if there's any additional questions, we can maybe cover them next week in that session. Benji, do we have a Q&A this week or is the Q&As?
I think that what we can discuss, isn't it, and post on the group.
Hanji.
Angie.
So I feel like it will be helpful just for any final questions. Maybe we could do that on Thursday. We also have these other things happening. So every other Sunday, sorry, no, the Sunday morning session will continue basically. Then if you're in the Slough area, we have a family divan 6 to 6:50 at Singh Sabha Gurdwara. Monday again in person at Singh Sabha Gurdwara. We do lots of Simran, lots of Gurmat Vichar. And that's also streamed on our Telegram group. So if you don't have access to that, put a message on WhatsApp. So people go on Telegram and they do Simran. But if we're doing these face-to-face events, you can access them that way as well. Benji, are you still going to be offering something midweek, Wednesday,
Angie,
Thursday?
when Wednesday, I've been doing Wednesday 5 to 6 p.m. Again, that's
Anji,
streamed on Telegram and it's recorded so you can listen back. And that's a weekly session.
Gee. And then Saturday every other week at Ram Gurudwara in Slough, there's a session. We're trying to get that streamed as well. And as mentioned, VG's session on Saturday morning. Hanji. So we will let you know if either the questions can be answered next week, next Sunday. You can put them on the WhatsApp group, or we'll let you know if there's going to be a midweek session. So this course was completely free and we want to keep it that way. But if anybody does want to donate, please do let us know via DM on the WhatsApp group. How we will use that money are things like microphones. So when we are recording things, videos or things, we can have better quality. Also running the camps. At the moment, it's through the Sangha that are covering those costs. So if you feel moved to, feel free to message us and you can donate. And I think that's all, Benji. Anything else?
Angie, for those of you who have any questions, please don't hesitate to message. So some people are struggling to access Telegram. So, I'm the Benji
So
myself.
Susan Benji
Yeah.
is Amazing.
and
So if
Susan
you,
Benji can help as well. So
with the
just in
Telegram stuff.
yeah, so just feel free like to message. We want to be able to support you in all of this. We'll share the timetables. This timetable I think somebody was asking for.
हाँ
Uh,
जी.
yeah, somebody's asking for about donation link. We'll get that set up and share that in WhatsApp. And then volunteers for the camps. Yes, we did ask. And yeah, if you're interested in supporting, then just please do let us know and message us on WhatsApp. And yeah, and this is just the beginning. So, this was just to draw you all in, basically. And this is gonna be continuous, like now continuing. So weekly sessions and, in the same way that we've experienced this transformation here, that's just gonna continue and increase as we attend Sangat weekly, as we make this a part of our day-to-day practice life. The benefits are just going to increase and increase. Hanji.
So please forgive us for any
Hanji.
mistakes that we may have made. It's been amazing to have your Sangat, and let's all do that binti that we have, that darshan, that milap with Paramatma, Deho Sajan, Asi Sariya, Jo Hove Sahib Syomir. वाहिगुरु जी का खालसा वाहिगुरु जी की फतेह वाहिगुरु वाहिगुरु